Hey cool people, I'm Nick, I'm a he, him, and today we're going to talk about which Heartless were Organization XIII's. Like the good one, not the KH3 version. 4 quick things. Number 1, Xemnas and Roxas will be skipped because, we know they're Heartlesses. And some Seeker of Darkness is Xemnas's, and this little itty bitty stinky baby Shadow is Roxas's. 2, in Dream Drop we found out that you have to defeat somebody's Heartless and Nobody for the original somebody to return. Like, sure, why not? That means that since the Organization Somebodies came back in Dream Drop, and then some even got re-nobodied in KH3, it in turn means their Heartlesses must have been defeated prior to Dream Drop, meaning the Heartless had to have been defeated during Kingdom Hearts 1, 358 Days Over 2, that's really how you say it, or Kingdom Hearts 2. Also, Birth by Sleep 0.2 as well, but I don't know if defeating Heartless in the Dark Realm counts, so that'll be a judgment call if it comes up. 3. The other thing we know is it cannot be a Heartless that we never defeated. So, it can't be White Mushrooms in Kingdom Hearts 1, Pink Agaricus or the Black Ballad in Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, or the Mushroom 13 in Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, as these enemies are never actually defeated. They just despawn after you complete their gimmicks, so if a heart doesn't fly away when they're defeated, no wait. No heart, no count. And 4th, I'm going to be deciding my Heartless based on 2 factors. Their power set, like how Xaldin controls wind or Axel controls fire, and the weapon. And do you know why?
Because I say so, that's why!
Also, general aesthetic and power level will be accounted for. Because I think if their Nobody subordinates match them, why can't their Heartless? And, they have strong hearts, so it'd make sense they'd produce a strong Heartless. Alright, attack the like button with your Keyblade and we'll get started.
All the other kids with the pumped up kicks better run, outrun my gun. Yuck.
So this is how the layout will go. First, I'm going to check the 358 intro, specifically the Nintendo DS one, since it gives us way more detail about the organization members, and for Xigbar, it says, manipulates space. And we know he uses arrow guns, because dual crossbows didn't sound cool enough. Now we'll compare the Nobody subordinate, if they have one. Xigbar's is called the Sniper, and in the journal it's described as very agile, defying gravity, and attacks using arrows of light. I might even go over visual similarities, and I think with the Sniper we can see it. Next, we'll talk about the member's signature ability. What's that, you might ask? Well, in 358 Days Over 2, each organization member has a specific element or magic that they have control over. For instance, Xigbar's signature ability in 358 is called Shoe Glue. Which is a space manipulation, I guess. I mean, it feels like a very Xigbar prank to glue your shoes to the ground while you sleep. But basically, it prevents jumping, and it's also categorized as gravity magic. I'll also add right here additional details like their Mushroom 13 counterpart, or criteria that's specific to that member as it becomes relevant. But now that we know all those things about Xigbar, we can use that to identify a potential Heartless counterpart. So we're looking for a Heartless that shoots things and manipulates space, either by defying gravity, using gravity, or casting the shoe glue debuff. Xigbar also likes to teleport, so we can include that as well. And I'm going to put them on a tier list. Woo! Mini tier list time! Now, from least likely to most likely. E tier, Toy Soldier and Cannon Gun. It's not enough to just be a shooty little fella. These two really hold no ability to manipulate space in any way, unless you count the ridiculously mad hops as space manipulation. Next, in D tier is Giga Shadow and Land Armor, which give the shoe glue debuff in 358, but they don't have the ability to shoot anything, so they're probably not what we're looking for. But at the top of D tier, Lurk Lizard, which gives shoe glue debuff, and also shoots some sort of projectile, but it's really not in the aesthetically Xigbar style, In C tier, we have Grim Reaper, the Port Royal boss from Kingdom Hearts 2, which, okay, I get it, might seem like a real out there pick, until you consider that it teleports around just like Xigbar, and that it comes from somebody with a very strong heart. But, given that it has no projectiles, it's probably not our guy.
Trust me, you're not that guy.
Starting off B tier, we have 2 Heartlesses from 358. Dark Follower, which is just Darkseid with a fake mustache. It gives the shoe glue debuff and is strong. And technically has projectiles too, but they're kind of like big balls and not really arrows. So next, just above that, is Poison Plant, which does shoot projectiles and gives shoe glue. And is sort of a lower tier boss. It even shows up in the late game. But Xigbar doesn't give off like the plant vibe like someone like Marluxia does, which is what keeps it from breaching into A tier or higher. Speaking of A tier, at the bottom we have Wizard, which I'm pretty sure is the only Heartless to use gravity magic, like, ever, and is a late game Kingdom Hearts 1 Heartless. So, I'd say it's pretty strong, but it's not really Xigbar in any other way. However, it does appear solely in Hollow Bastion before the Heartless upgrade, so that's like a neat connection. Above the wizard, though, is the Watcher, aka Surveillance Robot, but specifically the 358 version, because it's inherently a shooting Heartless, it floats, and it gives the shoe glue debuff, which I think is a pretty compelling case if only it were a strong enemy as well. There actually is a stronger version in 358 called Guardian, however, it does nil or null defense damage, which is Xemnas' signature ability, so it's probably not our guy either. Instead, at the top of A tier sits Infernal Engine, another 358 boss which has several archers on top of it, although no shoe glue debuff or any sort of use of space/gravity magic. I also don't imagine Xigbar's Heartless is just a giant death Zamboni. That doesn't track for me. In the end, I think they all fall short of my S tier pick, Sniper Wild, a stronger Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix enemy which, while unmentioned, Xigbar is all about stealth, that's kind of his deal. And when you look at the main mechanic of Sniper Wilds, you gotta be stealthy to defeat them, with their following mechanic of teleporting into multiple copies and shooting the living out of you, seems like a pretty good fit to me. Alright, we get how this works? Sweet. Then according to the 358 intro, Xaldin can harness wind, and we know he uses 6 lances. The journal doesn't say much about his nobody subordinate, the Dragoon. However, we can see it's vaguely person-shaped with wings and a lance, and for some reason wearing that one Monster Hunter helmet. Ironically, I noticed that's the same kind of helmet Master Xehanort uses in his final boss Remind fight. It's not relevant, but it is interesting. Anyway, Xaldin's signature ability in 358 is arrow-based attacks, which causes air toss, yeeting the opponents into the air and then letting them gently float down. So, we're looking for a Heartless that either manipulates wind, uses air toss, and or uses a lance/lances. I guess teleportation is also kind of on the table here too, since he does it a lot in his boss fight, but I'm not making it a main character criteria like I did with Xigbar. Starting with E tier, we have Screwdriver, Assault Rider, and Lance Soldier, which are all at the bottom of my list because they just use lances, and that's not good enough. The only reason Lance Soldier is even at the top of E tier is because it does this whirlwind spin attack, which is vaguely wind-like, wind-adjacent, but it's not enough to breach E tier. In D tier, we have Sky Grappler, Loudmouth, Storm Bomb, Dual Blade, and Emerald Blues as they're wind-based, or can use the Air Toss debuff. They don't really have anything else about them that relates to Xaldin, though. Starting off C tier, we have Lance Warrior, which uses a lance like its Lance Soldier cousin, but is also a Cabinet of Remembrance specific Heartless, so it's definitely on the stronger side, and has that Hollow Bastion specific connection. Next is Spring Metal, Stalwart Blade, Artful Flyer, and Air Battler. All are stronger Heartlesses with either the Air Toss debuff or just general wind powers. The Artful Flyer and Air Battler are topping this tier simply because they have a vague, dragon-like aesthetic. In B tier, we have 2 bosses that manipulate wind. Kurt Ziza, a very strong boss that can cast tornadoes to encircle Sora. And also, something we might have overlooked, it has 6 arms like Xaldin has 6 lances. Just saying, it's there. It's all connected. Next up is Antlion from 358, which is another desert boss with wind powers, though it doesn't really have anything aesthetically to do with Xaldin, which is why neither Antlion or Kurt Ziza breach A tier. Storm Rider, however, starts off A tier, as it fits that dragon aesthetic and is another boss, so is strong. Additionally, while not a point towards it, you do use Ride the Wind prompts to fight it, which I find interesting. But just above Storm Rider is Dustflyer from 358, probably the strongest Heartless in the game, actually. It can use Air Toss, and is also fitting of that dragon aesthetic. But S tier for me is something that's a bit more specific to Xaldin's capabilities. The Windstorm is my S tier pick. Essentially, it's a more wind-centric Dustflyer, which is why I think it deserves the top spot. It keeps the dragon aesthetic, and while it may be a weaker boss than Dustflyer, it's still a boss, and it uses only wind attacks, so I think it's perfect. Cold enough to chill my bones, it feels like I don't know you anymore. I don't understand how you're so cold. Vexen has dominion over ice, and we know he uses a shield. Now, Vexen is different from the other two we've talked about in that he has no nobody subordinate that we're aware of, so we'll skip that for now. His signature ability in 358 is Freeze, which is what it does. It freezes you, just like in his Absent Silhouette / Data Battle.
Ice, ice, baby.
So we're looking for a Heartless that either uses ice powers or has a shield, which, I don't know if you all knew this, but that's very few Heartless. At the very bottom of V tier, we have Fat Bandit. While it has a shield for a stomach, it's specifically a fire enemy, so there's no way it could be Vexen's Heartless. In fact, you stay in E tier by yourself and think about what you've done. In D tier, we have Large Body, Barrier Master, Clay Armor, and Large Armor. Being that they're also just belly shields, they only fare better than Fat Bandit because they aren't fire-based. Otherwise, they're still trash. In C tier, we have Blue Rhapsody, Avalanche, Blizzard Plant, Icy Cube, Skater Bomb, and Fortune Teller, which are all just ice-based enemies or can use the freeze debuff. But again, that alone isn't enough for me, so capping out C tier, we have Solid Armor. And while it's got a shield and is a stronger Heartless, it is actually weak to Blizzard magic, meaning it is definitely not Vexen's Heartless. But that's why it never breached C tier, so. At the bottom of B tier, we have Land Armor. As opposed to its previously mentioned variants, it breaks into B tier because of its shield, it's strong, and it is the Russian variant of the large bodies, as it takes half blizzard damage. Next in B tier is Ruler of the Sky from 358, which is a weird possibility for Vexen, but it can freeze you and use Ice Pillars, something you could argue is uniquely Vexen, and it's strong being that it's a late game boss. But no real shield, so to speak, and it's a treasure chest / bird boss, which doesn't have anything to do with Vexen. In A tier we have Wizard making a triumphant return like before as a late game Kingdom Hearts 1 Heartless, so it's on the stronger side, and it has Blizzard magic, but it's more of a jack of all trades, so just above that we have Snowy Crystal from 358 and Blizzard Lord from Kingdom Hearts 2, which are both strong ice enemies, but don't really have a shield or a Vexen aesthetic. If you're curious what a Vexen aesthetic is, it's this. So finally for S tier, we have kind of a tie, because functionally, these two match all the necessary criteria, so for all intents and purposes, they both make S tier. Rune Master from Kingdom Hearts 2 Cabinet of Remembrance, its book acts as a shield, and it is a stronger Heartless, and it can shoot ice-like projectiles. It ties with Defender from Kingdom Hearts 1, who has a real, physical shield, and can use a Blizzard magic spray, and is a stronger late-game Kingdom Hearts 1 Heartless. And as a fun thing, both spawn specifically in Hollow Bastion. I think you could argue that Rune Master should come out on top because it fits more with that 358 intro, chilly academic descriptor for Vexen, but then again, Defender has an honest-to-goodness shield, hence why it's a tie. But I'm a bit more in favor of Defender personally, so let me know if you agree with me down in the comments below. It also fits that dog aesthetic.
I'm someone, I'm not nervous, I'm as tough as the CrossFit nerd is.
Lexaeus is tremendously strong, stalwart as the earth itself, and we know he uses some sort of axe sword thing. Also, he has no nobody subordinate that we're aware of, and his signature ability in 358 is causing the debuff half HP, categorized by earth, which is what it does. So we're looking for a Heartless that either has earth powers, can half your HP, is deliberately strong, which unlike the other members so far is a mandatory thing for Lexaeus, and also uses some sort of sword or axe weapon. In fairness, his weapon is pretty unique, so I'm willing to kind of fudge it. If a one weapon is more like one than the other, it's not that important to me. Also, this is just a side note, in Chain of Memories, he seems to command an awful lot of darkness, so I'll add dark as another criteria for him, but it's the least relevant aspect in my opinion. In E tier, we're going to put all the Heartless that only fit in the dark criteria: Shadow, Possessor, Massive Possessor, and Mega Shadow. Darkness alone is not enough to be a Lexaeus Heartless. In D tier, we have Aerial Master, Clay Armor, Driller Mole, and Stalwart Blade, which can either use half HP debuff in 358, or is vaguely earth-based, but nothing else. Groundshaker comes in at the top of D tier just for being strong and vaguely earthy. Also, ground is in its name, so that has to count for something. In C tier, we have Gargoyle Knight and Gargoyle Warrior. Both have a weapon, and I give them the earth criteria since they're both made of stone. And if Atla has taught me anything, it's that stone is a kind of earth. And also leaves are sad. Following that, we have B tier with Dark Ball, Giga Shadow, Neo Shadow, Nova Shadow, Shadow Stalker, Dark Thorn, and Dark Follower. In that order! Which all fall under the criteria of Dark and Strong. Topping B tier we have Land Armor, Dust Flyer, and Powered Armor, which all can give the half HP debuff, but also are either strong enemies or bosses. Now in A tier we have Invisible and Orcus from Kingdom Hearts 1 and 358 respectively, as they fit the criteria of Dark, Strong, and have a sword. But above them in A tier is actually one you might not expect. Dark Side, which is dark, can use half HP in 358, and is also very strong because it's a boss. Pretty convincing criteria. Until you consider my S tier. You've activated my trap card. I'm sending you to the Shadow Realm with Earth Core. Now the Earth Core I'm referring to shows up in Birth by Sleep 0.2, which is canonically before and during Kingdom Hearts 1. It's a dark enemy, and it's an earth enemy, and it's a late game enemy. Well, since Aqua starts the game at like level 50, Earth Core has to be strong too, just by comparison. But if you think Earth Core shouldn't count, then Darkside from 358, that's my pick.
Don't break me down, bury me.
Zexion can create illusions at will, and he uses a book. He has no nobody subordinate that we're aware of, and his signature ability in 358 is Flipfoot, i.e. illusion-based magic, which basically is the confuse status effect in games like Recoded and Birth by Sleep. So we're looking for a Heartless that either has a book, illusion powers, or can cast Confuse. Additionally, his relevant mushroom, mushroom number 6, makes copies of itself, so we'll include that in our search criteria. In E tier, we have Scorching Sphere. I think this is the absolute least likely for obvious reasons. It's a great ball of fire! While it can give you the Flipfoot debuff, it's mainly a fire enemy, not an illusion one. In D tier we have Sapphire Elegy. I don't know how to say that word, so that's the only time I'm saying it. Carrier Ghost and Symbol Monkey, all from 358, which can all give the Flipfoot debuff. But I don't really have anything else going for them in terms of their Zexioniness. That sounds sexual. In C tier we have Barrier Master and Bookmaster, which have books, so good for them. In B tier we have Tricky Monkey, which is the stronger version of Symbol Monkey, and it can use Flipfoot. In A tier we have Nova Shadow, which can use Flipfoot and is also sort of a boss, superseded by Phantom Tail, which is a boss, and can use Flipfoot, but they don't really fit that Zexion aesthetic either. Also, honorable mention, Pot Scorpion kind of does this like clone situation. It's a gimmick Heartless from Kingdom Hearts 1. I forgot to include it in my ranking here, but let's just say it's top in B tier. It's the bottom. It's the very bottom of A tier because that's where I have space. So anyway, my S tier does have that sexual aesthetic. Rune Master from Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, which is a Cavern of Remembrance, strong type of Heartless, and has an actual book, though no illusion-esque powers, so to speak. Unfortunately, for Zexion, there just really isn't many options to choose from, and Rune Master just seems to fit the best aesthetically, so I'm actually going to strike it from Vexen's record. Vexen is Defender, and Zexion is Rune Master, and that's just the way it is. Only the moon breaks Saix's ice. Oh, let me read it like Jiminy. Only the moon breaks Saix's icy calm. That's sort of Jiminy, I don't know. He uses a big sword hammer called Claymore, and the journal doesn't really say much useful about his nobody subordinate, the Berserker. However, we can see it uses a variant of his weapon, described in the journal as a hammer, and the Berserker itself is pretty beefy. The journal also makes mention that Saix's poise bellies a more savage nature. So finding enemies that become enraged or more aggressive as you hurt them can fit our criteria as well. And also if they have a big honkin' weapons, or you know what, even if just they themselves are big. Although that one I'm not including every giant Heartless, there's too many, but like I'm not ruling out if they're just sort of big. You know what I mean? That's why I'm anyway, Saix's signature ability in 358 is Silence, or moon-based magic, which basically disallows you from casting magic.
Everybody shut up.
So we're looking for a Heartless that has a large weapon, I won't really be splitting hairs on the kind, is itself big, gets enraged, and or can use moon/silence-based magic. In E tier we have Air Pirate, Barrel Spider, Pot Spider, Minute Bomb, and Hot Rod, which I categorize all under Rage, Rage. Air Pirate does that super aggressive point and then charges the player. Barrel Spider will self-destruct when disrespected. Pot Spider will dive bomb the player. Minute Bomb will also get pissed and self-destruct. And Hot Rod actually experiences a surge of anger, but those things alone are hardly enough to be considered Saix's Heartless. In D tier we have Hammer Frame, Gargoyle Knight, and Armored Knight, which all carry a weapon of some sort. Hammer Frame itself like being a weapon, and also, I just noticed this, it causes a shockwave similar to Saix's. How about that? In C tier we have Snapper Dog and Solid Armor, which can activate the Silence debuff. Solid Armor is also rather large, so thumbs up. B tier we find Large Body, which is large, and actually very obviously rages. After that is Invisible and Orcus, which are both stronger and have weapons. But at the top, Bully Dog, which is big too, and uses the Silence debuff. In A tier, we have Dark Thorn, which is just a big and strong Heartless, Iron Hammer, which is just a stronger version of Hammer Frame, and Mad Ride and Aerial Viking. Stronger versions of Hot Rod and Air Pirate, but with the same propensity for
Unyielding rage!
And my S tier is a 358 version of Guard Armor. It's big, it's strong, and it causes the Silence debuff. Not exactly what I thought I'd end up with, but it does seem to fit most of my criteria, despite not having a weapon or raging.
I set fire to the rain, watching porn as I touch your face. Mind burning as I cry, as I heard it screaming out your name.
Axel is an assassin who puts his own agenda first, and wields fire. His weapons are chakrams, and the KH Wiki says his subordinates are the Assassin Nobody. Fun fact, I didn't actually know that. The journal doesn't really give us much insight. However, the Assassin Nobody as well as Mushroom number 8 have this weird affinity for being pulled out of the ground, so we'll see if we can make anything work with that. I also don't think any enemies have chakrams, so any dual-wielding enemy works for me. Axel's signature ability in 358 is Ignite, a fire-based magic which basically is a dot, damage over time, but with fire specifically. So we're looking for a Heartless that dual wields, uses fire or the Ignite debuff, and may have some affinity for being in the ground. Maybe that's some sort of reference to Axel putting people 6 feet under? I don't know. In E tier we have Driller Mole and Antlion, because essentially they're partially underground. It's not much of a relation, but there it is. In D tier we have Luna Bandit, Graveyard, and Toy Soldier, which all dual wield, but don't fit into any of our other categories. In C tier we have our Fire users or Ignite debuffers. Barrel Spider, Red Nocturne, Fat Bandit, Detonator, Minute Bomb, Fire Plant, Flare Note, Cannon Gun, Scarlet Tango, and Fiery Globe. Very large C tier. But these enemies are basically equal, aside from the Barrel Spider, which deserves to be at the bottom. You know what you did. B tier, Defender, Wizard, Jumbo Cannon, Tailbunker, Crimson Jazz, and Scorching Sphere. They're all just stronger enemies with fire abilities. I think Defender and Wizard are the least likely since they're multi-magic users, and Scorching Sphere comes out on top because it's round, like the chakrams. Really used my brain on that one. In A tier we have our fire bosses, Dust Flyer, Infernal Engine, and Volcanic Lord, but they don't top A tier, and that's because of Trickmaster and Crimson Prankster, who are also fire bosses, but they dual wield. Crimson Prankster being just a little above Trickmaster because the Prankster is a much more fire-based version of Trickmaster. But I think the absolute S tier is the Heat Saber from 358, because it's a fire enemy with dual wielding, and while it's not a boss, it definitely has that Axel aesthetic, at least I think. This song is called Water. 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 Thank you. Demyx's description I'm taking from both 358 Nintendo DS version, where he prefers to kick back with his sitar and leave the dirty work to the water under his command, and also the 1.5 version, Melodious Nocturne. The KH Wiki says his subordinates are the Dancer Nobody, and their journal doesn't really give us any useful insight about them. However, like the Mushroom number 9 counterpart, we can surmise that dancing plays a role with the Demyx Heartless as well. Demyx's signature ability in 358 is Damage Drain, a water-based magic which causes enemies to continually sap away your HP. So we're looking for a Heartless that uses water magic, saps HP, is musical and or dances, and I would add plays an instrument, but none of them do. In E tier we have Soldier, Deserter, Sergeant, and Fortune Teller. They're only here because I've considered their idle animations kind of like dancey, but that's it. In D tier we have Search Ghost, Hover Ghost, Carrier Ghost, Zip Slasher, Nova Shadow, and Ruler of the Sky, which the 3 ghosts can all grab you and drain your HP, while the other 3 all have the actual HP drain debuff. And while 3 of the 6 are strong boss-like Heartless, they still don't really have much in a Demyx aesthetic. There's really not much water dancing around this tier. C tier, we have Sea Neon and Sheltering Zone, 2 water enemies from Kingdom Hearts 1, who are arguably pretty passive enemies much like Demyx is, but affinity for water alone is not enough. In B tier, we have Wave Crest from 358, a stronger Heartless that has the HP Drain ability, and Water Breath, but no musical relevance to meet that kinetic aesthetic. In A tier, we have Bubble Beat from 358, which shoots water, and has the HP Drain ability. Also fits that sort of like melody theme, but not as much as my S tier pick. My S tier pick is Turquoise March. I really think I spoiled that before with the Melodious Nocturne bit, but okay, so it's probably just coincidence that the Red Nocturne already exists. I mean, it just tracks for me that someone under the moniker of Melodious Nocturne would themselves be one of the Heartless types that have that specific magic ability, and a color, and a musical piece name. And since Turquoise March also comes with HP Drain and Water Magic, I think it's a no-brainer. This is the only one I'm 100% sure of. To Luxord, life is just a game to be won, and he has all the time in the world to do it. We also know he uses cards as his primary weapon. His subordinates are the Gambler Nobody, and the only journal insight we get is that his Nobody also likes to play games with cards and dice, and Mushroom number 10, his counterpart, wants you to find the real version amidst 4 clones. Super! Luxord's signature ability in 358 is Rewind Defense, time-based magic, which reverts the player's defense back to their level 1 defense for a short time. I think. So we're looking for a Heartless that uses time magic, plays games, uses cards and dice, or forces you to find the real one. Hell, I'll even extend it out to enemies who just have a gimmick. E tier, Tricky Monkey and Symbol Monkey, which does have a game gimmick, but being that they're mimics, it's a take on Find the Real One. You know, sort of. I mean, that's why they're in E tier, you know. In D tier, we have Bulky Vendor and Rare Vendor, which has a game gimmick of getting a reward within a time limit, but well, that's like sort of Luxord-like, because, you know, the Gamblers do a similar idea. It's not very Luxord-like. I mean, it's more so than the Mimic Monkeys, I'd wager. C tier, we have Grand Ghost, which is just kind of a stronger version of Bulky and Rare Vendors, but more different. Then there's Striped Aria, which is just an enemy that can use Rewind Defense. For B tier, we have Chimera, which is a strong Heartless from Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, where you have to knock its orbs back at it. Kind of like the worst game of baseball you've ever played, which is impressive, because every game of baseball is the worst game of baseball you've ever played. Moving on to A tier, there's Invisible, Orcus, and Stalwart Blade. All strong enemies that can cause Rewind Defense. Okay, and while I don't love this, S tier goes to Pot Scorpion. I know, just... It's doing its own version of Find the Real One in a group of fakes, but it really has nothing else other than being a stronger Kingdom Hearts 1 Heartless. So like, I don't know, the unfortunate reality is Luxord just doesn't have a good Heartless match. Not in Birth by Sleep 0.2, not in Kingdom Hearts 1, 358, or Kingdom Hearts 2, since no Heartless uses cards or dice, and only like a handful do games or manipulate time. If I could pick ones that despawn, I'd pick White Mushroom for the Magic games, or Black Ballad since it mimics Mushroom number 10 exactly. But I can't, so Pot Scorpion it is, and we'll just have to deal with it. If you can think of a better one, feel free to comment it down below, because this is the best I got. In the arc of Marluxia's scythe, flowers grow, and all else perishes. His subordinates are the Reaper Nobodies from Kingdom Hearts 3, and the journal doesn't give us much insight about them, at least nothing we didn't already know. Conversely, the Mushroom number 11 counterpart is very bizarre, as it deals with the Final Fantasy Doom spell, seen only a handful of times in Kingdom Hearts. But fun fact, most of those times it's used by Marluxia. Marluxia's signature ability in 358 is Blind, a flower and dark-based magic, which makes it so the player constantly misses their attacks. So we're looking for a Heartless that has a scythe, uses flower magic, uses Doom, uses dark, or blinds its enemies. And heck, I'll throw turns invisible in there for fun, because it's like an opposite blindness, right? For E tier, Shadow, Possessor, Giga Shadow, Mega Shadow, and Massive Possessor are all just dark enemies, which, yeah, isn't enough for that Marluxia aesthetic. In D tier, we've got Stealth Sneak. In D tier, we got Sneak, because it can turn invisible, but I know that connection is tenuous, and that's why it's in D tier. Stealth Soldier also fits in the boat with Sneak. Creeper Plant, which is your average flower type, has nothing special about it other than that. Then we have Clay Armor, Hover Ghost, Pink Concerto, and Illuminator, which all activate the blind status effect, except Illuminator, which is an interesting case since it darkens the room near completely until you defeat it, which I would categorize as a version of blind. Not like the turn invisible way, but in the way where you actually can't see very well. C tier comes in with Dark Ball, Invisible, and Neo Shadow at the bottom, and no, Invisible's not on the list just because of the name. They're all just strong and dark Heartless. Next is Land Armor, which is another strong enemy, but it can inflict blind. But at the very top of C tier we have Dire Plant, which is a flower enemy, and it can use the blind debuff. But it's not very strong, so I think that there's some that place better than it. Starting off B tier, we have Stealth Army, a strong enemy that can turn invisible. Above that are Nova Shadow and Shadow Stalker, two strong and dark type Heartless. Then we have Phantom, which is strong and the only Heartless that can cast Doom. But it doesn't really have like that plant aesthetic, though arguably is very close to that Reaper aesthetic. So that's something to think about. I might be categorizing Phantom a little too low, honestly. But rounding off B tier is Leechgrave, another boss, but this one has flower power, being that it is partially one. You can also categorize the Tentaclaws as dark types, so it's got that going for it too. And its body is a coffin, also partially fitting that Reaper aesthetic. In A tier we have Veil Lizard, which is strong, can cast blind, and turns invisible, but is at the bottom because of that lack of flower aesthetic. Next is 358 Darkside, because while it's strong, dark, and can inflict the blind debuff, it also just isn't a flower enemy, which I obviously find wildly important to Marluxia. Dark Follower is next, however it's equal to Darkside, so they're basically interchangeable. And at the top of A tier we've got Dark Thorn, a little left field one, but it's strong, it's a dark enemy, and if you look closely it has these sort of like flower thorns going along it, like going up the legs and arms and stuff, which you could argue gives it that flower aesthetic. But I think regardless if you agree or disagree with that take, I don't think it's going to matter, because the most likely candidate is Poison Plant. A late game boss in 358, it can use the blind debuff, and it's literally a big honkin' flower. What more do you want? That's gotta be it. And the last of the crowd for today. The 358 intro says she wields sharp knives, and her lightning strikes as quick as her temper. Her subordinates are the ninja nobodies from Kingdom Hearts 3, and the journal talks about how those clones do look mighty convincing. So okay, great, we have a third member that's all about duplicating themselves. Her Mushroom number 12 counterpart follows the clone thing, and honestly, quick side note, if I could pick Black Ballad, I would. But the little just disappears at the end of the fight. Back to it. Larxene's signature ability in 358 is Jolt, which is a thunder-based magic, where a player or enemy takes damage when they run into allies, enemies, walls, or objects. So we're looking for a Heartless that uses electricity, knives, can cast Jolt, and may use clones, or is a ninja, I guess. For E tier we have Yellow Opera and Bolt Tower. Outside of the ability to use thunder, these enemies don't even have limbs to hold knives, and can't make copies of themselves either. D tier, Aqua Tank, Strafer, and Devastator. While they have thunder abilities, and limbs this time, they're lacking that rude, crude attitude, and thus are not fitting of Larxene's aesthetic. In C tier, at the bottom we have Reckless, the Cavern of Remembrance version of Devastator. It can do thunder and is particularly strong, but that's kind of it. Next is the Wizard, and while it can use thunder magic and is vaguely humanoid, it also doesn't fit that Larxene aesthetic. B tier are all bosses. At the bottom we have Behemoth, which has that big lightning cast. Then Infernal Engine above that, which can use Jolt, and above that Storm Rider, which uses thunder as its main source of damage, and even has a Larxene-esque Thunderball attack that it uses. But it falls short in one area that I think the next two tiers make up for. A tier we have Tide, Invisible, and Orcus, which both in 358 can cast Jolt. They're also like humanoid and use a weapon, so that sure is something. But I think even more likely to be a Larxene is, drumroll, Blitz Spear. It's a strong Heartless, it can use Jolt, and it even casts multiple thunders when it slams down from its jump attack. And it has blades on its arms, which I think is as close as we're going to get to the Larxene knife situation. So, here's my picks. And I think these are pretty good and accurate picks. Mostly. So here's a little bonus lightning round, Larxene pun intended. What would Xigbar, Vexen, Saix, Demyx, Luxord, Marluxia, and Larxene's Heartlesses from when they return in KH3 be? While you're thinking about it, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Helps me out a lot. Hit the bell. Do the thing. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Xigbar's new Heartless is the Bizarre Archer. He shoots things, it shoots things, What more is there to say? Vexen's new Heartless is the Frost Serpent. Between that and the Winterhorn, which are the only two Ice Heartless aside from a fish, at least the Frost Serpent is a threat. Saix's new Heartless is Rock Troll. This one honestly just works too well. Big undefined hammer thing on a gigantic body that rages? Come on. Demyx's new Heartless is the Marine Roomba, another one of the color and music piece Heartlesses, and it's a water one too. Luxord's new Heartless is the King of Toys, because literally no other Heartless is even remotely game-based. Ugh, this guy and his hard-to-pin-down Heartless, I tell you what. Marluxia's new Heartless is Parasol Beauty. Jiminy's journal begins with, the prettiest roses have the cruelest thorns for this Heartless, and you know what? That's good enough for me. You could argue it's Chief Puff or Puffball, but argue that in the comments. I'm not arguing it here. Lastly, Larxene's new Heartless is Lightning Angler, because the only other lightning enemies are Gold-Beaten Sea Sprite, so why not pick the strongest? Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this. Shout out to my patrons. Feel free to join them at patreon.com/NickMcSlighton. Again, thanks for 1,000 subscribers. I never thought I'd even get that high, so this is. I'm very happy. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.